7 Days Hotel, Porthampton. Connor MacDonald rode an electric bike to the 7 Days Hotel, colloquially known as the Lover's Haven, to deliver food. Today was the birthday of his girlfriend, Mandy Hines. After delivering the last order in the morning, he would go on a date with her. Filled with anticipation, Connor carried the takeaway and walked toward the 7 Days Hotel. Just then, a young man and a girl walked out of the elevator hand in hand. The guy was wearing an Armani shirt, a Rolex watch, and a BMW key fob hanging on his waist. The woman was dressed in a miniskirt that exposed her shapely white thighs. She was smitten and looked enticing. The two clung to each other and flirted with each other like they were a couple. "Mandy?" Connor could not believe his eyes, and he hastily ran to them. Last night, Mandy had told him that she was going to the movies with her bestie and would not be back that night. Connor never expected that he would run into her at the 7 Days Hotel. She was startled. Her expression changed. She subconsciously wanted to break free from the guy when she heard Connor's voice, but the guy was holding her tightly. "What are you afraid of? Do you still want to be with that broke guy?" He was shorter than average. If it were not for his branded wear, he would have been inconspicuous, and no one would have spared a glance at him. Mandy's eyes flickered for a moment. She was not as panicked as before, but instead she looked callously indifferent. "Well, now that you found out, I guess it's time to let you know, Connor," said the rich guy holding Mandy. "Your girlfriend is dating me now." He was Connor's classmate, Brandon Guthrie. Unlike Connor, he was a rich kid. Connor staggered back as his face was grave when he heard Brandon's words. Then, ignoring Brandon, he pulled Mandy over. "Come home with me, Mandy. I can make you happy. Don't touch me." Mandy pushed Connor's hand away. "Why should I go with you? Can you afford to buy the phones and handbags that I like? You even need to wait until my birthday before we can watch a movie. What makes you think you can make me happy?" "Mandy, I may be broke now, but I will work harder." Connor gritted his teeth. "Work harder? You're an orphan with no money, power, or background. You can't achieve the level of wealth that Brandon has just by being a delivery guy," Mandy sneered. "Wake up, Connor. Mandy won't go with you. Do you want her to deliver food with you?" Brandon taunted him. "I have long wanted to tell you that you don't deserve me." "We are done, Connor," Mandy said in an icy voice. Then she turned to look at Brandon with a fond smile and put her hands through his arm. "Let's go, Brandon. A broke guy like you don't deserve love, you know?" Brandon shot a disdainful look at Connor as he brought Mandy toward a BMW parked outside the hotel. Connor looked on while his heart was aching as Mandy left. He felt angry, painful, indignant, yet helpless. "You humiliate me just because Brandon is rich?" Connor lowered his head, and his hands clenched into fists. His fingernails sank into his palms until his hands were bleeding. Connor and Mandy met in college. They had become a couple during the first faculty fellowship. She was innocent back then, but now she had betrayed him and chose Brandon. Connor did not beg Mandy to stay or chase after her because he was broke. Who was he to compete with Brandon? He had seen through Mandy by now. Because he was broke, Mandy had repeatedly insulted him for the past 2 years. Nevertheless, Connor had never said a thing. All he could do was work harder and make money to support her. However, she cheated on him by hooking up with the rich kid. Find updates on novel.com. "You have humiliated me today. One day I will make you realize that it is you who don't deserve me," Connor said to himself with a gleam in his eyes. The cafeteria, Porthampton University. "Look on the bright side, Connor," Dominic Turner, Connor's roommate, said. "I told you a long time ago that Mandy doesn't belong to our world. She is beautiful, hot, and flirty. I knew at first glance that she wasn't serious about relationships. As the saying goes, the goddess of the poor, the sperm vessel of the rich, a long-legged beautiful girl with ample bosom like her is a plaything of the rich. Plebs like us should stay clear of girls like her. Otherwise, they will make us cuckolds, eventually. I suppose you have slept with her, right? You got nothing to lose." "The thing is, I didn't," Connor said. "What, you didn't? You two have been together for years, yet you didn't touch her? Didn't you two go to a hotel after a movie?" Dominic jumped to his feet, looking distraught. "We checked into a standard double bedroom, but nothing happened between us," Connor said. "You can't be serious." "What a loser you are." Connor thought for a moment and agreed with what he said. He genuinely loved Mandy and respected her, so he never forced her to do things that were against her will. Just that, alas. Connor looked at the orders on his phone. The only benefit of the breakup was that he could finally stop delivering food. Just then, his phone beeped with an incoming text message. Your account number ending is credited with $1 billion. Your account balance now is $1,056. Connor looked at the message and was wide-eyed. Holy moly! Who deposited $1 billion into my account? Something just came up. I have to go, Dominic. As soon as Connor saw the fund transfer notification on his phone, he ran out of the cafeteria without finishing his meal. Just then his phone rang. He hurriedly took it out and answered, "Hello? May I speak to Connor McDonald?" A voice that might belong to a middle-aged man came through. It was deep, sonorous, and unhurried. "This is Connor speaking. And you are?" He was startled for a second. "You are inheriting an estate. I was wondering, when can we meet up?" the voice said respectfully. "An estate? So it was you who transferred the money to me?" "Yes, but the $1 billion is only a small part of the estate. Most of the remaining fixed assets and overseas funds need to go through the formal process before they can be transferred to you." "Holy moly, $1 billion is only a small part of it?" Connor exclaimed in his mind. "But I'm an orphan. Where did I get my inheritance from?" "We will talk about it when you come over. Find me on the 38th floor of the Empire World Building. I will explain everything," the voice said. Connor hesitated for a moment. "Okay, I will see you in the afternoon." "Okay, Mr. McDonald." The person hung up the phone politely. After leaving the campus, Connor returned to the rented place outside the campus. Because he was working as a delivery guy at night, the dormitory's gate had closed by the time he went off work at 1:00 a.m. Hence, he had no choice but to share a rented house with others. Connor's room was less than 10 square meters, but he felt that it was spacious enough. It was only 12:00 p.m., but Connor thought of going back to his rented place to take a nap and would only go to meet that person at the Empire World Building in the afternoon. His stomach growled as nature suddenly called. He hurriedly grabbed a roll of toilet paper and ran into the toilet. While he was doing his business, he played Candy Crush on his mobile phone. Just then, someone suddenly opened the bathroom door. A beautiful girl in a lace sleeping gown walked in, rubbing her eyes groggily and running her fingers through her hair in front of the mirror. She looked as if she was still half asleep. Connor was sitting on the toilet bowl right behind her. Unaware that Connor was behind her, the girl put her hands to her waist and started to take off her clothes. She lifted her sexy lace sleeping gown, pulling it up little by little, revealing her sexy waistline and the seductive black strap. She had a hot body, a pretty face, long legs, dark wavy hair, and a very youthful vibe. Connor's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and he forgot to make a sound. Halfway through with the undressing, the girl opened her eyes, looked in the mirror, and saw the wide-eyed Connor behind her. Coming to her senses, she grabbed the cosmetics on the side and hurled them at Connor. "Connor, you stinky hooligan!" the girl screamed as she pushed the door open and scrambled out. Connor hurriedly pulled up his pants and ran out. Because he was in such a hurry, he accidentally bumped into the couch and groaned in pain. After catching his breath, Connor yelled at the room next door, "Are you crazy, Mina?" The beautiful girl was Mina, who shared an apartment with Connor. "I dare you to say that again!" Mina's angry voice came before her hot body appeared in the doorway. Her face darkened as she glared at Connor with knife-like eyes as if she was going to kill him. "Why did you break into the bathroom and hurled cosmetics at me?" Connor patted the cosmetic powder off his face, looking pissed. Was she entitled to bully him just because she was a girl? Mina stared at him angrily as she came up, wanting to give him a fair one. "You freaking pervert and stinky hooligan. It was you who hid in the toilet to peep at me. Yet, you still have the nerve to accuse me with your chop logic." Connor flipped out upon hearing that. "I peeped at you. Get your facts right. The bathroom is only this big. Where would I hide?" Mina walked over angrily and was stunned when she heard that. She lost her mind when she was angry just now. But looking back, Connor really had no place to hide considering how small the bathroom was. Mina blushed and continued, "Then why were you hiding in the bathroom?" "I was hiding in the bathroom? Come on. It was you who broke into it, okay? Do you think that everyone is like you, hiding in the house every day without having to work or go to class?" "I'm not going to argue with you. I have something going on," Connor said sarcastically to Mina. Connor was furious. Mina was the one who suddenly came in when he was doing business in the toilet. Connor was an orphan who went to Porthampton to attend college. He rented a room outside while working as a food delivery guy during his free time to make ends meet to support himself and his girlfriend. Mina was already staying there when Connor moved in. Despite living under the same roof for half a year, there was little interaction between them. Connor usually delivered takeouts besides attending classes, while Mina shut herself in the house. No one knew what she was doing. When Connor was not working, he would wonder if his sexy housemate was someone's kept woman, as every time he saw her, she looked tired. A misunderstanding, like today, was the first time it had happened. Having stayed here for so long, Connor also knew that Mina always slept late. Therefore, he did not lock the door when he went to the toilet. Little did he expect that Mina would get up so early today and come in without warning. Taunted by Connor, Mina blinked for quite a while before she came to her senses. "Why didn't you lock the door? Do you think that the toilet is your private property?" Mina did not care about that. Connor almost saw her naked, and she would not let Connor off just like that. "Are you blind? The toilet lights were on. Didn't you see that?" He would not be a gentleman to Mina since she could not be reasoned with. If it was not for Mina being a girl, he would have beaten her on the spot. Mina pointed at Connor furiously. "Are you even a man? How could you blame me when you didn't lock the door? I will never be done with you if you don't apologize to me today. Find updates on novelbin.com. Oh yeah? Do you really think of yourself as some sort of celebrity? I won't even spare a glance at your flat chest even if you beg me," Connor sneered, sweeping his eyes over Mina's breast with disdain. "You." Mina's face flushed. Honestly, Mina's breasts were not huge, but she was not breastless. "I'm not going to argue with you. I have things to do." Connor looked at the time. It was already 1:30 p.m. He had no time for Mina. Immediately, he grabbed the key on the table and then hurried out the door. "Come back here, Connor, you freaking pervert." Mina grabbed the cushion on the couch and hurled it at Connor. But Connor had disappeared out of the door in the blink of an eye. The security door was slammed shut with a loud bang before the cushion hit it. "Holy moly, that girl is nasty," Connor sighed and went downstairs indignantly. After leaving his rental place, he rode his electric bike and headed toward the Empire World Building. Connor arrived downstairs at the Empire World Building at 2:00 p.m. The Empire World Building was 68 floors tall. It was a high-end commercial office building in Porthampton, so the rents on each floor were exorbitantly high. The open-air parking lot of the Empire World Building was full of all kinds of luxurious cars. The personnel entering and exiting the Empire World Building were all dressed in suits and leather shoes. They all appeared to be successful people. Connor, on the other hand, was dressed in a dirty food delivery uniform and stood at the door like a beggar. "Excuse me, sir. For food delivery purposes, please go to the fire escape passage on the side." The beautiful receptionist frowned and shouted at him when he walked into the building. Her expression reeked of disdain. "I'm not here to deliver food," Connor replied flatly. "You aren't? Then, what are you here for?" The receptionist still sounded not too happy. "I'm looking for someone." "Looking for someone? You're just a food delivery guy. Who are you looking for?" The receptionist glanced disdainfully at Connor. Connor did not know the name of the person who called him earlier. He just wanted to find out as soon as possible whether the inheritance was real. So he ignored the receptionist and walked toward the elevator. "Hey, stop! What is wrong with you? I just told you to use the fire escape." The receptionist ran after Connor, trying to stop him. Ding! Just then, the elevator doors suddenly opened. Seeing that the receptionist was running after him, Connor quickly slipped into the elevator. Ouch! There was a sudden burst of scream in the elevator. Connor entered the elevator in a hurry. Not noticing that there was someone inside, he collided with the person in the elevator. "Are you blind? Didn't you see that I am inside here?" The person in the elevator roared. Connor could not help but glance up at the woman in the elevator and froze in place. The woman was beautiful, in her early 20s, and was wearing a black professional suit that set off her nearly perfect hot body. Her long, shapely legs were wrapped in a pair of black stockings. Overall, she looked pleasing to the eyes. Although there was a hint of anger on her pretty face, she was still sexy and charming. When Connor crashed into the woman, she was holding a cup of coffee in her hand, and the coffee was splattered on her chest. "You freaking delivery guy. You are not supposed to be in this place. Security, get him out!" The woman scolded in disgust when she saw Connor wearing a yellow food delivery uniform. "I'm sorry. I was in a hurry. and I didn't notice you here. As Connor spoke, he took a tissue from his pocket and tried to wipe the coffee off the beautiful woman's clothes. When he reached his hand to the lapel of her suit, the woman screamed instinctively, "Ah, help! Help!" More than a dozen security guards rushed over in an instant. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Seeing the security guards running toward him, Connor pushed the black-stocking beauty away and bolted into the elevator. Then he hit the 38th floor button. When the security guards arrived in front of the elevator, they found that Connor had already taken the elevator up. "Are you okay, Ms. Moore? What just happened?" The head of the security team looked at the black-stocking lady in puzzlement. "A food delivery guy came out of nowhere and touched me." "Catch that pervert and hand him to the police." The black-stocking lady blinked while her sexy eyes were welling up. But the head of security was in a pickle. "But what?" The black-stocking lady frowned. "The kid has gone up to the 38th floor. Mr. Woods has instructed that no one can go to the 38th floor without his permission," the head of security said helplessly as he looked at the beautiful lady. She was startled upon hearing that. "Then wait for him here and block all the exits. He will eventually come down anyway," said the lady with hatred in her tone while gritting her teeth. After entering the elevator, Connor looked at his right hand and felt helpless. The lady had well-endowed breasts. They felt good to the touch. But he also knew that he was in big trouble this time. However, Connor was not in the mood to worry about that. His priority was to figure out what the money he received was all about. A minute later, the elevator reached the 38th floor. Connor stepped out of the elevator and found that the entire 38th floor was a single-unit office. The decoration of the interior was lavish. Looking out from the windows, one could almost overlook the entire Porthampton city skyline in a single glance. Sitting on the chair behind the desk was a middle-aged man in a suit and tie. When the man saw Connor, he hurriedly got up, walked over to him, and said respectfully, "I've been expecting you, Mr. McDonald." "So, you're the person who called me?" Connor asked with a frown. "Yes, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Thomas Morgan, General Manager of Empire World Corporation," the man said with a smile. Connor nodded, looking around the office, and asked, "You called me and said that I have inherited an estate. What is going on?" "Mr. McDonald, do you remember your granduncle?" Thomas asked in a low voice. "My granduncle?" Connor was stunned. Suddenly he remembered that he had indeed seen his granduncle when he was a child. The thing was that his family said that his granduncle had died when he was still in elementary school. "Your granduncle was the chairman of Empire World Corporation. At the beginning of founding the company, Mr. Barry emigrated abroad and lived alone. Because he has no children and other next of kin, all his property will be passed on to you," Thomas said slowly. "I will inherit it all alone." Connor was stunned, not expecting that the stories that only existed in TV series had happened to him. "Yes, let me give you a brief explanation of Mr. Barry's estate. He has $1 billion cash in the country, which I have transferred to you in advance. But that is only a small part of it, since Mr. Barry had been living abroad for a long time. Besides Empire World Corporation in Oprana, his estate includes Terrence Group in Europe, Radiant Group, and several African oil companies." Thomas took out a document from the drawer and explained to Connor the estate that he was to inherit. In the beginning, Connor was still listening attentively to Thomas's explanation. But toward the end, Connor felt that it was too surreal and could not help but interrupt Thomas. "Hold on a second, Mr. Morgan. Are you sure that all these are mine alone?" "Absolutely." Thomas nodded, looking at Connor sincerely. "How much are these assets worth?" Connor continued to ask. "Well," Thomas was startled for a second, and then he said softly, "Conservative estimation shows that it's 10 trillion US dollars. 10 trillion? And it's in US dollars?" Connor was wide-eyed and voice trembling upon hearing what Thomas said. "Absolutely." Thomas looked at Connor and nodded. "That's impossible." Connor shook his head. "You must be lying. My grandfather has a cousin, but I never knew that he is so wealthy. $10 trillion should have put him on the list of world's richest men." "I suppose you are talking about the Forbes list of the world's billionaires, right?" Thomas looked at Connor and smiled. "That's right. That's the list. If he was really that rich, he would have been on the list a long time ago, right? Let me tell you this, the people you see on the list are not really rich enough. They are on the list just to increase their fame in order to get better social resources. Mr. Barry had long passed that stage and had been living abroad for a long time. He just didn't want to reveal his identity. Connor looked at Thomas and felt that he was not lying. Even if Thomas was a liar, there was no reason for him to deceive a penniless guy like him. Okay then, is there any condition for me to inherit the estate? Connor calmed down his excitement and asked. Thomas pulled the drawer open, retrieved a document from it, and handed it to Connor. This is the will that Mr. Barry made when he was hospitalized. You just need to sign it, and the inheritance will be yours. But there is one thing that you need to be aware of. What's that? Connor asked in puzzlement as he took the will from Thomas. Before Mr. Barry passed away, he specifically instructed that before you could inherit his estate, you must marry Freya Phillips. Otherwise, the estate would be donated to charitable foundations in its entirety, Thomas said slowly. Marry Freya Phillips? Who is Freya Phillips? Connor was stunned, not expecting that he had to fulfill such a special condition before he could inherit the estate. So, the inheritance came with a wife attached. According to the will, I can't reveal any information about her, Thomas said. Is Freya overweight and ugly? Connor asked with a frown. You don't have to worry about her. Even if she isn't good looking, you can turn her into a beauty as long as you have money in this modern age, Thomas said with a smile. What you said makes sense. Connor rubbed his nose and nodded. Okay, I agree. If you have no further questions, sign the will now and it will take effect immediately. Thomas pushed the will in front of Connor. Connor had no reason to refuse such a massive inheritance. He would marry a pig, not to mention an ugly woman, for the inheritance. It was because Connor had suffered enough from being poor. After Connor put his signature, Thomas put away the will, took out a black card, and handed it to Connor respectfully. What is this? Connor took it in puzzlement. It is the American Express Centurion card, the most prestigious debit card that American Express had launched in the United Kingdom in 1999. With this card, you can enjoy the world's top member-only benefits and services, and you can spend at will with no spending limit. Connor studied the Centurion card and smiled at Thomas. Are you sure I can use this card at will and there's no spending limit? Absolutely. The spending of this card is borne by your company, and the total market value of your company is over $10 trillion. So, if the spending is within $10 trillion, then it will be fine, Thomas explained softly. I didn't know that there was such a powerful debit card. Connor grinned as he was ready to leave in a moment so he could give the card a try. By the way, Mr. McDonald, this is my business card. I am running the company for you. If you encounter any trouble, feel free to call me. Thomas handed Connor the business card respectfully. I will. Connor took the business card. If there is nothing else, I'll go now. Let me see you out, Thomas said politely. It is all right. I can go by myself. Connor casually held up a hand and left Thomas's office. 5 minutes later, Connor stepped out of the elevator. More than a dozen security guards swarmed over and surrounded Connor, who looked dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. I have been expecting you, you little pervert. The black-stocking lady whom Connor had touched earlier came out of the crowd with her arms akimbo. She looked at Connor with a sneer in her eyes. How dare you molest Ms. Moore, you freaking delivery guy? You must have a death wish. You should have looked at yourself in the mirror, you shameless pervert. The beautiful receptionist also joined the others to bash Connor. It's true that it was my fault earlier, but I already apologized to you. What else do you want? Connor said to the black-stocking lady in front of him with a frown. What do I want? Do you know how disgusted I felt when you touched me just now? I feel like killing myself whenever I recall what you did to me. The black-stocking lady despised Connor. Her voice was filled with contempt. No one is stopping you from killing yourself. Get out of my way, I need to go now. Her remarks had pissed Connor off. It was clearly a personal attack, so Connor also sounded exasperated. You want to go? The black-stocking lady sneered and pointed at Connor. You're not leaving until you apologize to me. How you want me to apologize to you? Connor looked at the black-stocking lady with piercing eyes. His voice was icy. Kneel and kowtow to me, and I will forgive you. If you refuse, then I will hand you to the police, she threatened him. That's right, kowtow to Ms. Moore, the security guards echoed. As Connor was surrounded by the guards, he looked helpless. He did not expect that the lady would make such an unreasonable demand. He had just accidentally touched her breasts, and she demanded him to kneel and kowtow to her. What are you waiting for, kid? Get on your knees, the head of security said in a commanding voice. Connor turned to look at the head of security but said nothing. Being poor did not mean that he had no dignity. What are you all doing here, Scarlett? Just then an angry voice came from behind Connor. It stunned everyone present. Thomas had wanted to see Connor out personally because Connor was now the chairman of Empire World Corporation. Moreover, as his subordinate, Thomas wanted to curry favor with him. Thomas just did not expect that Connor would go in such a hurry. Connor did not give Thomas the chance to butter him up, and he walked into the elevator alone. So, Thomas had to wait for the next elevator to go downstairs. When he finally came downstairs and stepped out of the elevator, he saw a crowd swarming around Connor, blocking him at the elevator entrance. He went weak at the knees at seeing what happened. "Mr. Morgan!" Scarlett saw Thomas and exclaimed in fear. "What are you doing here, Scarlett?" Thomas stepped forward, questioning her with a grave face. "Mr. Morgan, this penniless delivery guy, molested Miss Moore. Miss Moore and the others are now teaching him a lesson." The receptionist shot off her mouth before even figuring out what had actually happened. "Penniless delivery guy?" Thomas was struck dumb for a second, and then he angrily pointed his finger at the receptionist. "You are fired. Get out of here." The receptionist was appalled, blinking her big round eyes as she looked at Thomas in puzzlement. "Mr. Morgan, didn't you hear what one say? Get the hell out of here." Thomas was indifferent toward her, but when he turned to look at Connor, he was very respectful. "Are you all right, Mr. Chairman?" "This is all my fault. I should have accompanied you downstairs and seen you out just now." "I'm fine." Connor waved his hand. Everyone's mouth was agape as they were all astonished upon hearing what Thomas said. Did the general manager of Empire World Corporation just address the penniless delivery guy as chairman? Chairman? Scarlett was stunned. Her voice was trembling and her pupils constricted. She looked at Thomas and asked, "What is going on, Mr. Morgan?" "What is going on? Mr. McDonald is the new chairman of Empire World Corporation. Apologize to him immediately." Thomas's face looked grave. Scarlett had a fearful expression on her face. However, she quickly came to her senses and said to Connor with no hesitation, "Mr. McDonald, I was wrong. It was my fault. I was the one who offended you. Please forgive me." Scarlett bowed to Connor after saying that. While bowing, she deliberately squeezed her breasts, exposing a large portion of her fair skin. Connor saw it and was wide-eyed. He could not help but exclaim in his mind, "This woman called Scarlett is so much sexier than those college students." Just this act of hers alone had aroused his desire. "How do you want to punish her, Mr. McDonald?" Thomas looked at Connor respectfully. Scarlett heard that and panicked. She hurried up to Connor and said softly, "I beg you, Mr. McDonald, please don't fire me. I will do anything you ask me to." Not everyone had the opportunity to work in the Empire World Corporation, which was the top dog of the top 100 companies in Oprana. It took Scarlett a lot of hard work to become a department manager earning a 7-figure annual salary. She did not want to lose her job because of this. "You will do anything?" Connor chuckled playfully. Seeing Connor's attitude, Scarlett beamed. "Yes, as long as you don't fire me, one will do anything for you." She licked her lips as she spoke, and her eyes were teasing with seduction. Being able to become a department manager in her early 20s, Scarlett knew where her strengths lie. Besides, as the chairman of Empire World Corporation, Connor was a somebody. So, Scarlett thought that if she could make something happen between her and Connor, her position in the company would be solidified. "Well, since you can do anything, then tomorrow you will work as a janitor in the company." With that, Connor walked out of the company building without looking back. Scarlett was rooted to the spot, feeling humiliated. She never expected that Connor was not tempted by her beauty, but instead, he asked her to become a janitor. "Didn't you hear what Mr. McDonald said?" Thomas asked with an indifferent face. "Yes, Mr. Morgan." Scarlett nodded hurriedly. It was better to work as a janitor than to be fired. After leaving the Empire World building, Connor was eager to test out the Centurion card. To do that, he headed toward a nearby bank on his electric bike. 5 minutes later, he entered the banking hall of the bank. Since it was a weekday, there was no crowd in the bank. He went straight to the teller counter. The teller lady, a woman in heavy makeup and a professional suit, saw Connor come in and said lazily, "How may I help you?" She sounded cold. Having been in the job for so long, she could tell the background of the person at a glance. Connor was wearing a food delivery uniform, looking like a pauper through and through. The teller lady acted unenthusiastically, thinking he was just another insignificant customer. Nevertheless, Connor did not mind her bad service attitude. "I would like to perform a withdrawal," he said flatly. "Withdrawal? Don't you see the ATMs over there?" The teller lady sounded not too pleased. "Just Google it a little if you don't know how to use them. I'm busy." Busy? She was so free that she could take a nap there if she wanted to. Her attitude pissed Connor off, so he called out, "One demand to see your manager." Connor raised his voice. "Is this how your bank does things? Don't you know that customer is king? I can't believe it." Hearing the noise in the banking hall, the branch manager hurried out. "What's going on?" Seeing the branch manager and thinking she had reinforcement, the teller lady pointed at Connor. "Mr. Manning, this guy's here to cause trouble." Mr. Manning was alarmed, looking at Connor with a scowl on his face. "What are you doing here?" Connor smiled wryly. "I would like to perform a withdrawal." Mr. Manning frowned. "There are ATMs for withdrawing cash. Why come to the counter?" The manager and the teller lady were just the same. They sounded unappeased. Then suddenly the penny dropped. Connor realized that Mr. Manning and the teller lady were having an affair. He did not want to argue with them, so he just told them, "What if I would like to withdraw $5 million? $5 million? The teller lady scanned Connor and taunted, "A food delivery guy like you wants to withdraw $5 million? Ha ha, you must be kidding me. Did you mean $500? $5 million, in your dream." Mr. Manning also did not believe that the guy who looked like a loser could withdraw $5 million. However, a branch manager like Mr. Manning was a sly old fox. He cocked an eyebrow and asked, "Do you really want to withdraw $5 million? The teenager wearing a food delivery uniform might look like a loser, but sometimes it was hard to predict the quirks of the rich." That was why he asked. Connor sneered. "Why else would I come here if not for withdrawing money? Or do you expect me to play games here? I have to inform my superior for such a large sum of money." Mr. Manning said indifferently, "Why don't you go to the lounge and wait for a while?" Connor nodded. "No problem." The teller lady sneered. "Mr. Manning, don't tell me that you really think he has $5 million to withdraw, do you?" "Shut up and knock it off." Mr. Manning was not too happy. One could tell from his experience that Connor was not joking. Connor was really going to withdraw $5 million. Ordinary folks would not come and ask to withdraw $5 million at one go. He was eager to cozy up to a super rich kid like Connor. The teller lady shut up immediately when Mr. Manning chided her, but she still had a disdainful look on her face. She did not believe that Connor had so much money to withdraw. A food delivery guy pretending to be a rich kid. Heck, but half an hour later, when she saw Connor carrying a sack of cash out of the VIP lounge with Mr. Manning following behind him servilely, she was stunned. Her eyes were wide open. Did this loser really withdraw $5 million? Does he really have $5 million, Mr. Manning? The teller lady had not given up and asked the branch manager. "Do you want him to show it to you?" Mr. Manning snorted, looking not too happy. Fortunately, he was more observant and did not offend Connor like the fool. Otherwise, he could have lost his job as the branch manager. The woman wanted to open the package to see if there were $5 million inside. However, she choked back just as she was about to open her mouth. "I apologize to you if my staff has said something that offends you, Mr. McDonald," Mr. Manning said respectfully. He then took out a business card. "This is my business card. You may come to me directly if you need help in the future." Anyone with a working brain knew that a person who could withdraw $5 million in cash was a VIP customer. He did not become a branch manager for nothing. He had to fawn up to Connor as he did not want to lose this VIP customer to other banks. Connor nodded faintly, took the business card, and put it in his pocket. He then said in a disapproving tone, "Mr. Manning, the service quality of your staff is much left to be desired. If this continues, it will not be long before you lose customers to other banks. I hope you can discipline your staff." Connor then tucked the sack of cash into the food delivery bag and left. Connor was riding an electric bike and was about to rush home. It was at that moment his phone suddenly started ringing. "Connor, where are you? Don't you know that we have classes in the afternoon?" His roommate Dominic yelled in urgency from the other end of the line. Dominic was Connor's roommate and one of his few friends in college. "Oh crap, I almost forgot. Connor exclaimed. He then quickly said, "I'll head over to class right now." "Hurry up," Dominic replied in a low voice and immediately hung up. Connor hurriedly rode his electric bike toward Porthampton University's campus area. His first class in the afternoon was finance. It was taught by a lecturer called Ray Walkster. What Ray hated the most was students being tardy. Anyone who had the audacity to be late for his classes more than twice would have to repeat the subject the next semester. Hence, Connor did not dare to dawdle. As soon as he arrived at Porthampton University, he quickly grabbed his food delivery bag and rushed to the classroom. 5 minutes later, he finally arrived at the classroom, but he was still late. When Connor got to the classroom entrance, he felt the whole class staring at him. For a whole minute, Ray paid no heed to Connor and carried on his lecture in the class. "Excuse me?" Connor called out as he stood by the door. Ray finally put the pointer down and turned to look at Connor. He said coldly, "Connor McDonald, did you lose track of time delivering takeouts? Do you have any idea what time it is now? Are you here to learn or to deliver takeouts?" Ray obviously was not really expecting an answer from Connor when he asked these questions. He just wanted to humiliate Connor. All students in the class burst out laughing when they heard Ray's words. Connor, who was currently in his yellow uniform, was holding a food delivery bag. He truly looked like a food delivery person. "Come here, open that food delivery bag you have in your hand and show everyone the delicious takeouts that you've delivered today." Ray continued ridiculing him. "Ha ha ha ha!" Once again, the classroom was filled with roaring laughter. The two who laughed the loudest were Mandy and Brandon. They were currently sitting in the last row of the classroom and flirting with each other. The sight of them made Connor feel bitter. That was because when Connor was still with Mandy, she had never sat with him before. All of his classmates obviously knew about Mandy dumping him. "I don't think that's necessary," Connor said indifferently. Although Ray Walkster was a lecturer at Porthampton University, he was not an educator who cared about the students. On the contrary, he looked down on poor students, so he often picked on Connor in his previous lessons. However, Ray had always tried to please the students from wealthy families. It was as if he was a lapdog. "Take your food delivery bag with you and quickly get to your seat. I'm warning you, the next time you're late, you won't be in my class anymore." "The poorer they are, the more hopeless they are," said Ray coldly. He lost interest upon seeing Connor's reaction. Connor could only oblige obediently. He walked into the classroom with a food delivery bag in his hand. Many of his classmates were looking at the food delivery bag he had in his hand. They were even whispering to each other and letting out faint sounds of laughter. All of them were probably talking about him delivering food. Connor sat in his seat but did not pay attention to the lesson. He felt bitter as he peered at the last row, where Brandon and Mandy were sitting. The source of this content, NOVLBN. "Connor, are you all right?" Connor's roommate Spencer whispered beside him. "I'm fine," Connor replied indifferently. "Why were you late? By the way, I heard that you and Mandy—" "Spencer, don't bring up something like that," said Dominic with annoyance while punching Spencer on the shoulder. Dominic and Spencer often helped Connor back when they were still in school, and Connor never forgot how good they were to him. "I'm fine, really." Connor forced a smile at the two and placed the food delivery bag under his feet. Dominic and Spencer thought Connor was in a bad mood, so they did not continue bothering him. One class period ended very quickly. After Ray had left, a sweet-looking girl stood up. "Class, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Let's have dinner together," she shouted while smiling. The girl, who was only in her early 20s, was very pretty and had a shapely figure. Her legs were fair and long. She had donned a blue short dress and a pair of sports shoes which made her look youthful and energetic. She was Eunice Tanner, the course representative of finance. Eunice was kind-hearted and innocent. She had never looked down on Connor for being poor. On the contrary, she had helped Connor many times. "Yes, we can finally have a dinner party together. The student representative has spoken, so all of us must go." Everyone in the class immediately became restless. At that moment, Dominic ran to Connor. He placed his hand over Connor's shoulder and said, "Con, come join us today. It's been a while since we had a dinner party together as a class." "Dominic, why are you inviting that pauper?" "How could he have the money to attend the dinner party?" A girl in a pencil skirt yelled at Dominic loudly. Connor could not help but lift his head to look at the girl. She was May Young, Mandy's best friend and roommate. May looked down on Connor and often bullied him. A huge part of the reason behind Mandy dumping Connor and choosing to be with Brandon was due to May's instigation. Exactly. How can a pauper like Connor afford to go to a dinner party? Mandy's other roommate, Lily Sullivan, added sarcastically. May, Lily, what are the two of you talking about? Dominic yelled, feeling irritated. Was I wrong? Would this penniless food delivery person have the money to join a dinner party? We had so many dinner parties together as a class, but have you ever seen him join one? May responded while rolling her eyes. I'll pay for Connor if he doesn't have the money. Is it really necessary for all of you to humiliate him like this? Said Spencer, who stepped forward. He could not stand them anymore. Ho, Spencer, since you're so wealthy, why don't you pay for me as well? Brandon shouted with a poker face after he heard what Spencer said. Spencer turned to glance at Brandon. A hint of uncertainty flashed across his eyes. Even though Spencer's family was doing quite well, his family's wealth was nothing compared to Brandon's. Therefore, he could only shut up. I'll pay for Connor. We're all classmates. Was all of this necessary? Eunice yelled with a frown. She could not stand them too. Suddenly, Connor said nonchalantly, Eunice, you don't have to pay for me. I have the money. When Connor's classmates heard him say that, they were stunned. All of them had very strange expressions. None of them expected Connor to agree to come to the dinner party out of the blue. Classmates with everyone for 3 whole years. Usually, Connor did not join them no matter the kind of. After all, Connor was currently in junior year, so he had been classmates with everyone for 3 whole years. Usually, Connor did not join them no matter the kind of get-together that was held. There was only one reason behind it. He had no money. When Brandon heard Connor say that he had the money, Brandon immediately laughed. Yeah, right. The food delivery guy has the money to join a dinner party? Connor, how about this? Why don't you treat the whole class to a meal? Brandon, don't joke around. If the pauper treats us all to a meal, I'll immediately go and eat poop. Suddenly, a guy with an unkempt and sleazy face shouted arrogantly. Connor said nonchalantly, all right. Since everyone wants me to treat the class to a meal that badly, then I will treat everyone to a meal. The sleazy-faced guy's smile instantly froze when he heard Connor's words. Everyone around them was surprised. Nobody expected Connor to agree to Brandon's request. After Brandon heard Connor say that he would treat everyone to a meal, a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. He could not understand it. Why would a pauper like Connor, who delivered food to earn money, suddenly turn over a new leaf and spend a big sum of money on treating everyone to a meal? Even Mandy was currently looking at Connor in shock. However, she quickly regained her composure. Connor was definitely posing. How could he possibly have the money to treat everyone to a meal? When Mandy thought about it, she felt glad that she had broken up with Connor. Otherwise, she would definitely feel so embarrassed right now. The source of this content, NOVLBE. In her eyes, Connor was a loser who did not strive to improve himself. Not only was he penniless, but he was also a poser. What's up with Con today? Dominic was also puzzled right now. I have no idea. Maybe he can't get over how his girlfriend left him for someone else, so he bit the bullet and agreed. Spencer whispered. Then he added, treating the whole class to a meal would just cost $2,000. In the worst-case scenario, the two of us will foot the bill for him. All right, if we split it by half, it would be $1,000 each. Dominic nodded. At that moment, he felt a little sympathetic toward Connor. What's gotten into you, Connor? Not only are you joining our dinner party, but you're also treating us to a meal. Could it be that you're just talking big? May teased Connor with contempt. Yeah, if you're really treating us to a meal, then Melvin would have to eat poop, Lily added. Melvin Jones was the sleazy-faced guy who said he would eat poop if Connor treated everyone to a meal. Well, isn't it just a meal? Connor responded indifferently. He then turned to Melvin and said, when will you give everyone a show of you eating poop? If you have the guts to treat us, then I have the guts to eat poop. However, you're not planning on taking us to a food court, right? Melvin spoke to Connor disdainfully. Connor worked hard to treat us to a meal. How could we possibly go to a food court? It should at least be Brasserie Le Bernardin, Brandon jeered. Brasserie Le Bernardin? Connor could not help but shake his head when he heard Brandon's words. Yes, exactly. Connor, if you treat us to a meal at Brasserie Le Bernardin, I'll eat poop for everyone to see, Melvin quickly added. What's the verdict, Connor? Since you intend to treat everyone to a meal, Brasserie Le Bernardin shouldn't be a problem, right? Asked Brandon with a vile smirk. No problem. Brasserie Le Bernardin it is, Connor replied nonchalantly. Once again, his classmates were stunned by his words. All of them knew that Brasserie Le Bernardin was where the state banquets were held. All of the chefs there cooked for the nation's leaders. Treating the whole class to a meal would cost at least $40,000 to $50,000. How could Connor possibly afford it? Has Connor gone crazy? Why did he agree to it? Dominic gasped lowly. If they went to a normal food court, both he and Spencer could afford to pay for the meal if they each paid half. However, if it was Brasserie Le Bernardin, the two of them would not even be able to afford it, even if they sold themselves for money. Going to Brasserie Le Bernardin isn't a problem. However, I have one condition. At that moment, Connor suddenly spoke. What's the condition? Brandon asked while looking at Connor. For today's dinner party at Brasserie Le Bernardin, you and I divide the check by 50-50. How does that sound? Ho-ho 50-50? Brandon sneered and said with contempt, not a problem. The cost for today's dinner party, we'll split it 50-50. Brandon, you're a champ. Whoa, I'm actually going to dine at Brasserie Le Bernardin. Their classmates burst into cheers when they heard what Brandon said. A meal at Brasserie Le Bernardin with this many people would cost at least $40,000 to $50,000. Even though it was only half of the check, it still amounted to more than $20,000. Even though this pained Brandon a little, it did not mean that he could not afford the amount. On the contrary, he felt like Connor could not shell out the amount of money. Connor, just you wait. I'll see what you'll do when we pay for the check later. Brandon looked at Connor's back and smirked. A while later, they arrived at the most famous restaurant in Porthampton, Brasserie Le Bernardin. The moment Connor's classmates entered Brasserie Le Bernardin, their eyes were wide in astonishment. Even though many in Porthampton University were born into second-generation wealth, it did not mean that all students were very wealthy. There were students from average-income families who had never been to a place like that. Meanwhile, Dominic and Spencer were trailing behind Connor with anxious expressions. Con, do you really have enough money to treat everyone to a meal? Spencer hesitated for 2 seconds before whispering to Connor. Don't worry. Since I dared to come, I must have the money to foot the bill, Connor responded calmly. But, just as Spencer was about to speak, a beautiful lady in a white bodycon dress walked over to Connor and everyone else with a smile. When the beautiful lady saw Connor, a hint of contempt flashed across her eyes. She then turned to Brandon and bowed while saying, Mr. Guthrie, are you here for a meal? That's right, we're here for a meal. Get me a big private dining room, Connor said in a conceited tone. Of course, Mr. Guthrie. We currently have the standard private dining room for $28,000, the VIP private dining room for $58,000, and the supreme private dining room for $88,000. Which would you prefer? The beautiful lady asked softly with a smile on her face. When Brandon heard what the beautiful lady said, he could not help but turn to Connor and say to him softly, Connor, it wasn't easy to get everyone to come to Brasserie Le Bernardin for once. I think the standard private dining room seems ingenuine. We might as well get the VIP private dining room. Brandon, aren't you being too unreasonable? The minimum cost for the VIP private dining room is $58,000, Dominic shouted, as if he was a little dissatisfied. Everyone present knew that Brandon was deliberately making things difficult for Connor. If Connor actually bit the bullet and agreed, then he would have to spend a lot of money. If he did not agree, he would then be embarrassing himself in front of everyone. Brandon ignored Dominic and said to Connor, So, just say the word, yes or no. Could it possibly be that you're frightened by the price of the VIP private dining room? There's no need to get a VIP private dining room, Connor said nonchalantly. Ha 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 ha, I knew you were a pauper. You don't have the money, yet you're still posing. Let's switch to the standard private dining room then. The reason Brandon had actually said those words just now was merely to ridicule Connor. After all, if they had really gotten the VIP private dining room, even he might not be able to afford it. Get us a standard private dining room then, gorgeous. Brandon turned to the beautiful lady in a dress and said, Of course, I'll have it arranged for you. The beautiful lady smiled while nodding her head. Hold on, when did I ever say that we're eating in the standard private dining room? It was at that moment Connor spoke abruptly. What's the matter? You changed your mind because you think that it's too expensive? Brandon turned to Connor and asked. Since you mentioned that it wasn't easy for everyone to come to Brasserie Le Bernardin for once, then why just a standard private dining room? Let's go straight for the supreme private dining room, Connor said calmly. When Brandon heard what Connor said, he instantly froze. The smile on his face also dropped. On the other hand, their classmates were also dumbfounded. Connor, have you gone mad? Do you know that the minimum cost for the supreme private dining room is $88,000? At that moment, Spencer spoke. That's right, Connor, you can't possibly not know about Brasserie Le Bernardin's minimum spending rule, right? Brandon also had a ghastly expression. Brandon would not have expected Connor to actually request for the supreme private dining room. The expression of the beautiful lady in white gradually changed. She had thought that Brandon was the wealthiest kid in the group. Never had she expected Connor, who was dressed in a food delivery person's uniform, to be the richest among them. Mandy sized Connor up, and she also had a shocked expression on her face. She could not understand why Connor, who had been stingy, became generous. He was now like an entirely different person. Con, can you really shell out this much? Dominic stared at Connor and asked. Of course I can. However, I'm worried that Brandon won't be able to. Connor responded nonchalantly. After Brandon heard what Connor said, he was taken aback for a moment. Then he proceeded to yell, Fine! Isn't it just a supreme private dining room? Why wouldn't I be able to shell out the amount? Since Connor wants it, then let's get it. Brandon fell right into Connor's trap. Brandon did not have the cheek to say that he did not have the money. So, he could only bite the bullet and agree. Once the beautiful lady had the private dining room set up, she led them into the room. Everyone had puzzled expressions on their faces after entering the private dining room. After all, they could not figure out why Connor, someone who made a living by delivering food, suddenly became so generous. Connor, do you really plan on treating us to a meal here? May's tone toward Connor had changed a little. Her eyes were sizing him up. Of course, everyone, eat all you want, Connor said nonchalantly. When everyone heard what Connor said, they immediately picked up the menu and started ordering. While they were ordering, Brandon looked like a sore loser and ordered a bottle of red Bordeaux in front of Connor. However, he did not expect Connor to follow along and order another 10 bottles of wine instead of feeling distressed. The order cost them nearly $50,000. Brandon's expression instantly darkened. He knew that he did not have that much money to pay the check. Brandon, aren't you looking a little ghastly there? Are you feeling distressed? Connor turned to Brandon and asked softly. New stories at nouvelle.com. Ho ho, those were just a few bottles of red wine. I have nothing to be distressed over. It's just a small matter. Brandon bit the bullet and replied, his head bowed as he checked his phone. He looked like he was going to look for people to borrow money from. Everyone dug in at once after all food was served. They did not care if Connor and Brandon could pay, but they just enjoyed themselves as long as they were not the ones who would pay for it. Mandy was sitting next to Brandon. Her expression was awful as she knew that Brandon could not afford to pay for today's meals. Even if Connor could pay for it, he would probably have to spend all his savings. Was it worth spending all his savings just to save face? Thinking about it, Mandy looked at Connor with even more disdain. She felt that Connor should not have competed with a rich kid like Brandon. Even if he won this time, it would not change the fact that he was a poor guy. 1 hour into the feast, everyone had had their fill. They all looked at Connor and Brandon, starting to worry that they would not have the money to settle the bill. The lady in a bodycon dress swung her hips as she walked up to Connor and Brandon in her high heels, and she said in a soft voice, "The total bill is $140,800, sir. Would you like to pay in cash or by card?" $140,000. Hearing the figure, everyone gasped in shock and their chests were heaving. No one expected that the meal would cost so much. Brandon's expression stiffened. It was $140,000. Even though he only had to pay for half of it, it was still $70,000. He simply did not have that much money in his hands now. While everyone was still in shock, Connor picked up the food delivery bag at his feet and took out a stack of cash. It was exactly $70,000. They saw the banknotes inside Connor's food delivery bag and gasped in astonishment. Holy moly! A whole bag of banknotes. How much is it in there? Connor looked nonchalant as he handed the stack of cash to the lady in a bodycon dress. Here you go. Thank you. The lady was a little nervous when she took the stack of cash. She did not expect that Connor would be so generous and did not even bat an eyelid over the meal that cost $140,000. I will only pay $70,000 while he will pay the other half. Connor pointed at Brandon just when the lady was about to leave. Everyone in the room was wide-eyed, looking over at Connor in shock. They never expected that Connor could fork out $70,000 without batting an eyelid. Brandon was still in his seat. Cold sweat trickled down his back as he did not know what to do. Absolutely. The lady nodded. Then she looked at Brandon. Would you like to pay in cash or by card? Brandon's mind went blank upon hearing that. He had long expected it would cost a lot to dine in Brasserie L.C. Bernardine. So, before Brandon came, he had borrowed $20,000 from a friend. Together with his own $20,000, he only had $40,000. Brandon did not expect that the meal would cost as much as $140,000. Give me a second. Let me make a call. Brandon stuttered, and then he picked up his phone and started dialing. Before going out to dinner, everyone thought that the person who would not have enough money to pay was Connor, not Brandon. The lady wearing a bodycon dress knew that Brandon was calling for help, so she said nothing and walked to the cashier. A few minutes later, the lady returned and handed a receipt to Connor and said softly, "Here is your receipt, sir." Connor nodded in acknowledgement. Then, he carried the food delivery bag and walked out of the private room. As for whether Brandon could settle the bill today, it was none of his business, and he did not want to know. When Dominic, Spencer, and Eunice saw that Connor was leaving, they hurriedly followed. "Wait for us, Connor," Dominic called out as he ran out of the private room. Connor looked back at Dominic with a smile and asked, "What's up? Where the hell did you get that money? Was it because Mandy broke up with you?" Dominic frowned, asking with concern. "It has nothing to do with Mandy." Connor let out a faint smile. "I won the lottery 2 days ago, so now I have some money." He did not want to reveal himself, so he made up an excuse to explain it. "No wonder." Eunice nodded and scratched her chin thoughtfully. "Since you have money now, why don't you buy yourself better clothes or use them for more meaningful things? Why waste the money inviting everyone to dinner?" "I didn't think about it that much," Connor replied her with a smile. "No wonder you have the money to invite everyone to dinner," said Spencer. "Is there anything else? If not, HL go now." Connor was afraid that his cover story would be blown. "By the way, Connor, our class has a WhatsApp chat group. I am thinking of inviting you to join us," Eunice said as she took her iPhone out of her pocket. Connor hesitated for a moment and looked at her helplessly. "I haven't downloaded WhatsApp yet. Add me when I get a new phone tomorrow." "Okay." Eunice nodded, but she did not say much. Connor then turned and walked out of the restaurant. Dominic and Spencer both looked at Connor from behind in puzzlement. Even though Connor explained that he had won the lottery, they could sense that the current Connor was very different from before. Inside the supreme private dining room, Brandon had called almost all his buddies, but none of them could lend him some money. The lady in white knew that Brandon had no money to pay, so she called in the security guards who stood in the doorway to keep an eye on Brandon. If Brandon could not fork out the money today, they would not allow him to leave the place. "Quick, think of a way, Brandon." Mandy was nervous when she saw the security guards at the door. "Don't worry, I'll call my dad and ask him to transfer the money." There was nothing Brandon could do now. He never expected that things would unfold this way today. Not only did he fail to humiliate Connor, but he also lost face in front of his classmates. "I'm going to the ladies' room." Mandy then carried her handbag and walked out. "I'm going too," May and Lily said in unison and left the private room too, as if they were afraid that Brandon would borrow money from them. The three girls were in the ladies' room. May took out her makeup set, looked in the mirror, and started to touch up her makeup. "Mandy, May, did you two notice that Connor looks like a changed man? He could fork out $70,000 and invite everyone to dinner, and his food delivery bag seemed to have a lot of money in it," Lily said in a low voice while washing her hands. "So, what if he invited everyone to dinner? Isn't he still a food delivery guy? The way I see it, he just wanted to show off and make himself feel better in front of Mandy after getting dumped," May sneered. "I must have been blind to date a broke guy like Connor back then. I really regret it whenever I think back about it. He spent his entire year's savings to invite us to dinner. I reckon he might have taken a loan. I just don't know what Connor is thinking, Mandy also said with disdain. Absolutely, he is such a pretender. Lily's mouth twitched. Smack! Just then, a blond man walked in and smacked Mandy's butt. He looked so drunk. Hey, beautiful, why don't we have a drink over there to get to know each other better? Mandy's dress was a revealing strap cami with exposed shoulders. The most alluring part was her full bust. No normal man could resist such a sight. After getting smacked on the butt, Mandy spun around and gave the man a fair one in return. Look at yourself in the mirror. Someone like you should perish the thought of inviting me to a drink. Don't waste my time. After being together with Brandon, Mandy's perception had broadened, and she had also acquired a hot temper. Especially after Connor invited everyone to dinner and paid for it, she was exasperated. Now that someone had groped her, she would not play nice anymore. The blond man was stunned after getting slapped. Then he put his hand to his face and shouted, "Bish, don't take my kindness as a sign of weakness." Ah! The blond man screamed in agony as he held his crotch and fell to his knees. Mandy had given him a good kicking in his crotch with her high heel when he was not paying attention. Rub your eyes so that you can see clearly next time. I am not someone who you can mess with, Mandy snapped and walked out at once. Stinky deckheads like you have the nerve to invite Mandy for a drink. You are just as disgusting as Connor. May shot a scornful glance at the blond man and left the place. All newest chapters on NOVELB.com. Bis! You three had better watch out, the blond man shouted while kneeling on the ground, holding his crotch in pain. Mandy, May, and Lily did not take him seriously and went straight back to the private room. When they returned, Mandy saw that Brandon was still talking to his father over the phone. She could even faintly hear Brandon's father scolding him. It was a depressing scene, so everyone bowed their heads and said nothing. Mandy knew that Brandon was in a bad mood right now, so she did not tell him about her being groped. 20 minutes later, Brandon's father arrived at Brasserie Le Bernardin by car. When Brandon saw his father's car, he ran out to his father. "Dad, I have been having." A middle-aged man got out of the car and slapped Brandon in the face. Smack. He then glared at Brandon and berated him. "Who do you think you are? $70,000 for a meal? Once we reach home, I will teach you a lesson." The other classmates looked helplessly at Brandon. They had known Brandon for so long, and they had never seen Brandon look so embarrassing. Being slapped by his father in front of everyone, Brandon could not feel more humiliated than that. He blamed it all on Connor. If it was not for Connor, he would not have been so embarrassed. Connor had spent all his money on Mandy before the breakup. So, his mobile phone was an outdated Android machine, which could only make phone calls and would crash as soon as he downloaded WhatsApp. Eunice had reminded Connor just now. So, after leaving Brasserie Le Bernardin, he bought the latest iPhone from an Apple store. The cost of the iPhone was just a drop in the bucket compared to how much he had now. Only now had Connor discovered how enjoyable life was for the rich. Half an hour later, Connor rode his electric bike and returned to his rented place. But the moment he inserted the key into the keyhole, he hesitated. He wondered if Mina would be sitting in the living room with her hands folded, waiting for him to come home and scold him. He honestly thought that he had done nothing wrong at noon. But then again, women never talk sense, and men were at fault for everything. With a mixed feeling, Connor turned the key and the door opened with a click. The living room was pitch black, and the entire house was so quiet that he could hear a pin drop. He was relieved as he laughed at himself for his ridiculous thought. Mina had been shutting herself in the house all day for the past half year of Connor sharing a house with her. No one knew what she was doing. She ordered takeout delivery every day, and the total time of the two of them seeing each other was less than 3 hours. Sometimes Connor wondered what Mina was doing inside her room. He tried to listen in occasionally and heard music interspersed with the voice of Mina talking. Turning on the light and gently closing the door with his feet, Connor dragged himself into the living room and collapsed on the couch. Several major things had happened in quick succession today, causing him to feel tired and dispirited. After resting for a while, he dragged himself up, returned to his room, found a clean set of clothes, and went into the bathroom. Another 10 minutes passed. Connor, wrapped in a bath towel and wiping his hair, emerged from the bathroom, which was right next to Mina's room. As Connor walked past outside her room, he heard Mina's voice, and he could not help but stop and prick up his ears to listen in. Mina's room was noisy, and the booming music made Connor feel uncomfortable. It even drowned out Mina's voice. After listening in for a while, he could only make out words like tips, guys, and follow. Curiosity killed the cat. Connor could not help himself as he wanted to find out what Mina was doing. That question had been bothering him all this time. She did not go to work or class, but holed up in the room all day with her computer always on. She had high monthly expenses with all the branded handbags, cosmetics, Versace and Dolce and Gabbana, which were not some budget brands. But that aside, the rent alone cost $2,000 a month, which was not affordable for normal white-collar workers. Since Mina was not doing anything, how did she support herself? Recalling the few words that he had just heard, the penny dropped and a thought came to his mind. Was Mina a cam girl? Connor was most familiar with the term cam girl. A pleb like Connor often browsed various websites to quench his youthful restlessness. Some live streaming apps had cam girls. As long as one paid, one could interact with the cam girls, request them to dance, sing, or have dirty conversations. When one was acquainted with them, one can even bring them out to dinner and watch a movie. Privately, those cam girls may also interact with their top supporters, sending them selfie videos or something as privileged for being their top sponsors. To put it bluntly, these live streaming apps were akin to the adult websites of some countries. The clothes they wore and the words they said were all highly suggestive and flirty, just stopping short of being naked. When Connor heard Mina's voice, he was on a high, thinking that perhaps Mina was that kind of cam girl. Cam girls mainly relied on tips from the audience and advertisement income. And Mina was beautiful and dressed sexily. If she was a cam girl, her income would certainly not be low. Connor rubbed his nose and sighed. What is wrong with this world? Pretty girls are selling their bodies or seducing the rich kids. Can't they find a proper job to support themselves? Connor roared in a low and helpless voice. Mandy had given up on herself for the sake of a rich kid, and now even his housemate was doing the same unsightly thing. All newest chapters on Novelby Income. It seemed that every beautiful girl had to use some crooked ways to make a comfortable living. He then thought about himself. After 3 years of working as a food delivery guy, day in and day out, he realized that he had lived in vain. Just then, the door swung open with a loud bang. Mina came out of her room and bumped into Connor head-on. Mina was startled, bouncing a step back, and stared at Connor warily. What are you doing standing here? Connor was also startled, not expecting Mina to come out at that time. His gaze fell on Mina, only to see her wearing a pair of hip-length hot pants which were so tight that they almost sank deep between her thighs. Her off-white, body-hugging, textured strap t-shirt revealed half of her fair and ample bust. Connor swallowed hard, pretending to be calm. Ahem. Well, I just came out of the shower. Connor returned to his bedroom as he spoke. Mina looked at Connor from behind with suspicion. It was not until Connor had disappeared into his room that she remembered that she was supposed to go to the bathroom. She did not think much about it and rushed into the bathroom. That was a close call. When back in his room, Connor quickly closed the door and leaned against it to breathe a heavy sigh of relief. Honestly, Mina had really startled him when she suddenly came out. If she knew that he was eavesdropping on her room, she would kill him on the spot. Connor shook his head, tossed the towel aside, and lay down on the bed to fiddle with his phone. Since he had just bought the phone, he needed to install the apps he usually used. With time on his hands, he first downloaded Twitch, thinking about watching a live stream. Coincidentally, Connor found a familiar face in the recommended channels section as soon as he opened Twitch. That person was none other than Mina. Feeling excited, Connor clicked into the channel named Mina's Private Cabin. In the live stream, Mina was singing, and her voice was sweet. She moved over to Twitch not long ago. Before that, she had been live streaming on another platform. Her live stream content was mundane. Other than singing and chatting, there was no explicit content, so her popularity was not high. There were very few viewers watching the live stream currently, but the bits, donations, and subscriptions she received every day were enough for her to spend for a month. Hey, beautiful, can I add you on Facebook? Do you have a boyfriend? If you don't, why don't you try me? Quote me a price, beautiful. How much do you charge for a night? Add me on your Facebook, beautiful. I will show you my enormous baby. As a cam girl, Mina would meet many weird viewers every day. But she could not be angry in front of so many people. Getting angry with her audience meant losing them, and it would be difficult to continue working as a cam girl. To develop her channel, Mina selectively answered some viewers' questions and ignored the insulting comments and demands. Fortunately, she had several moderators to help monitor the chats on her channel. I will sing another song for everyone because I'm about to end this live stream. Mina smiled sweetly. Just as she was about to start singing, she saw a viewer with the purple sub-gifter badge enter her live stream channel. Welcome Knowles of Porthampton to my live stream channel, Mina quickly said. But after that viewer entered the live stream channel, his first chat made Mina feel embarrassed. Since you're so beautiful, show me your pole dancing skill, Mina. 50 bits for that. Holy moly, 50 bits, this guy is crazy rich. Knowles, tip first and Mina will dance. Exactly, just singing is no fun. Mina, pole dancing please. Since Knowles has requested it, Mina, strip now. Because of Knowles of Porthampton's messages, the views on Mina's channel went ape. For a cam girl like Mina to receive a 50-bit reward was high. Supposedly, Mina should feel happy when someone's willing to spend money on her. But she was not good at dancing, nor did she like the teasing dance. So she squeezed a smile and said, I can't dance. How about you request a song and I will sing it to you? But Knowles of Porthampton did not seem to buy it. I just want to see you dance. I will first send you 25 bits. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Mina 5 bits. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Mina 5 bits. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Mina 5 bits. Notifications with special effects flashed on the screen. Awesome rich guy. You're my idol. You are the man. Proud of you. Dance now, Mina. The rich guy has sent you 25 bits. Dance. Dance. After Knowles of Porthampton sent Mina 25 bits, the number of viewers had spiked. Some viewers, who had just come in and did not know what was going on, followed the herd and cheered for Mina to dance. Mina was in a pickle. First, she could not dance, and Knowles of Porthampton seemed to have some ill intentions. If she danced, he might make more demands. Find new updates on NOVille.com. Because of the bits, thousands of views had come into Mina's live stream. The viewers seemed to carry a frantic rhythm. Some lewd viewers even requested her to dance in a miniskirt. Mina gritted her teeth with an aggrieved look on her face. But she did not dare to cry. In the entire Twitch platform, Mina was an innocent streamer. She could do what other cam girls do and flaunt her body in front of strangers. However, there was no way she could do that. Mina knew if she did that, she would get a lot of tips. But she did not want to do something that was against her principle. Just as the viewers were booing, Connor sent a chat that made him an instant public enemy. What's so manly about scumbags like all of you to bully a girl like this? Among the many chats, this one viewer soon became the object of siege by the other viewers. Isn't it just a dance? How shameful could it be when she is not even stripping? How do you become a BTCH and remain innocent at the same time? There are no two ways about it. She is just playing a delaying tactic. If I were you, I would have started dancing. Just off. New account without a cheer badge. Knowles has sent Mina bits to request her to dance. If you are not happy about it, you should also send her bits, loser. This fool is a wuss. You should keep his mouth shut if you can't afford to pay. Because of the bits, viewers in Mina's live stream channel had differing qualities. There were all types of people, including trolls. When they saw a new account that did not even have a badge, it upset them instantly. They started to single him out and attack him. Mina saw the viewers speaking up for her, and she felt touched and sorry for him. She hurriedly tried to stop them from fighting. Cut it out, you guys. I appreciate you all for coming to my live stream to show your support. I thank the viewer who speaks out for me, but I can't do pole dancing. Inside the room, Connor held his phone and saw the chats. His face was darkening. But what Mina said surprised him. It came as a surprise to him that Mina was not swayed by the offer of money. It was hard to stick to one's principle when loads of tips came in. Before this, Connor had always thought that Mina was the kind of snobbish girl who dressed revealingly all day, just to hook up with rich kids. But now it seemed that Mina might look open on the outside, but she was very principled. Let me ask you again, will you dance or not? The chat of Knowles of Porthampton came again, but Mina chose to ignore him this time. Q, BTH. Stop pretending. A BTCH that pretends to be innocent. Believe it or not, do you know that I can ruin your popularity on Twitch? Seeing that Mina ignored him, Knowles of Porthampton became furious and turned nasty. Mina's expression changed. As she gritted her teeth, she said, "Mind your language, Knowles of Porthampton. I appreciate your support, but if you don't like what I do, you may leave now." "Fine. I hope you will not regret it." Find new updates on novil.com. Buddies, let us go to another streamer. A hot chick. After sending his last 2 chats, Knowles of Porthampton left Mina's live stream channel. Moments later, a message popped up on the homepage. Knowles of Porthampton just tipped Rabbit Giant 50 bits. Click on the link to enter the live stream. After a while, Mina's popularity took a nosedive. Her viewers dropped from 30,000 to 100. Seeing her viewers leaving her, Mina's eyes welled up as she felt indignant. She said nothing and continued to sing. In less than a minute, the number of viewers watching her live stream had dropped to just a dozen. She looked at the pitiful number of viewers and could no longer hold back her emotions. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Seam just sent Mina's private cabin 100 bits. Click on the link to enter the live stream. A huge banner flew across the screen. The 100 bits of tip shocked the viewers in the live stream channel. 1 bit was equivalent to $1,100 billion sits would be $100,000. And the person who sent Mina 100 bits turned out to be the new user. Mina looked at the 100-bit tips. She was shocked, and her eyes filled with disbelief. She never imagined that someone would be so generous to reward her with $100,000. Mina had been a streamer for quite some time and had her own loyal followers. However, her live stream content was too clean, and she had not even revealed her thighs, let alone performing sexy dances and stripping. So, the money she could get every month was minimal. Tips like 100 bits had only appeared in Mina's private cabin for the very first time. Mina stared at the screen, feeling surreal and wide-eyed. After Connor sent Mina 100 bits, Mina's popularity soared again. The number of viewers increased from 1,000 to over 20,000. Who is Seam? He forked out $100,000 as a tip at once. Incredible. Those who just said that new accounts were wusses, broke, and losers, please step out. Mina, since the rich guy is so supportive of you, you have no escape tonight. Rich guy, I am 18 this year with long legs and a wasp waist. Please support me. This is my number, 110XXX. Let's have fun tonight. There was an explosion of discussion with everyone speculating who Seam could be. There was no lack of gold diggers who wanted to be a kept woman there. Connor read the comments and just smiled, explaining nothing. $100,000 would be an annual salary for an average person, but it was nothing to Connor. Mina was rooted to the spot right now, and she even forgot to thank Connor. Seam, are you trying to play the hero? I said I would ban this streamer, and you sent her tips? What are you trying to achieve? Knowles of Porthampton's message popped up in the chat box again. Connor sneered, but he did not respond. Aren't you rich, kid? Then, let's make a bet. I will support Rabbit Giant's livestream while you support that BTCH. Whoever loses is a Jax. Knowles of Porthampton saw that Connor was not talking and got angry in an instant. Fight back. Don't be afraid of him. Yeah, whack him. As though the situation was not heated enough, the viewers cheered on for Connor. Mina snapped back when she saw the chats. Seam, I'm grateful that you sent me tips, but please ignore people like him. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Rabbit Giant 10 bits. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Rabbit Giant 30 bits. Knowles of Porthampton just sent Rabbit Giant 50 bits. While Knowles of Porthampton had given Rabbit Giant nearly $20,000 worth of gifts, Mina's private cabin had yet to receive anything. Seam, aren't you a high roller? Did you get cold feet? Let me show you what a real high roller is. Seam, why aren't you saying anything? You poor pretender. I have seen many poor DC kids like you. Don't you want to hit on Mina? Don't you even think about getting her if I can't hit on her? Knowles of Porthampton taunted Connor when there was no response from Connor. The viewers who originally supported Connor started to turn against him, following Knowles of Porthampton to insult Connor. Seam just tipped Mina's private cabin 1,000 bits. A cool message flew across the screen. 1,000 bits were worth $1 million. When viewers saw the message, they and even the entire platform fell into silence. Mina was stunned and wide-eyed with her mouth agape. She could not imagine that someone would tip her $1 million at one go. Holy moly, another 1,000-bit tip. Awesome rich guy. Who the hell is Seam? He is well-deserved to be called a rich guy. He's so generous. After a moment of silence, Mina's livestream channel started to fire up, reaching 500,000 viewers, and the chat section exploded. Mina looked at her computer screen, feeling dumbfounded. Where is Knowles of Porthampton? Doesn't he want to bet with the rich guy? Knowles, why are you so quiet? Come on. Don't get cold feet now. Keep tipping. Knowles of Porthampton, who had previously mocked Connor, disappeared without a trace after seeing Connor give out a $1 million tip. Meanwhile, Connor found his phone constantly vibrating after tipping 1,000 bits. Countless streamers sent him private messages. Some even sent photos with extremely explicit content and nearly half of their bust exposed. However, Connor was not tempted at all. Seam, thank you so much. What is your Facebook account? I will add you as a friend. Mina was smitten and her voice emotional. She no longer looked as aloof as before, but instead, she became even more stunning. It's okay. I'm going to sleep now. Bye. After Connor sent out the chat message, he exited Twitch and got ready to sleep. As he lay in bed, he thought of his life for the past years. Connor worked his butt off as a food delivery guy for 3 years to support Mandy and himself, and he endured countless ridicule and insults. But now, he had finally come up in the world, and he would make those who had humiliated him pay for their mistakes. Don't you like rich people, Mandy? If you didn't break up with me, you would have been the richest girl in the world. But alas, it is all too late. Connor could not help but lament softly. Knock, knock, knock. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Who is it? Connor asked subconsciously. But no one else was in the house other than Mina. Are you sleeping, Connor? Sure enough, Mina's sweet voice came from outside the door. It's late at night. Why is Mina looking for me at this hour? Did she find out that I am Seam? Connor thought to himself. Then he said toward the door, Not yet. Is there something you need? Come over to my room. I have something for you. Mina then returned to her room. She has something for me? What the hell is she up to? Connor looked puzzled when he heard Mina. After hesitating for a moment, he got dressed, pushed the door open, and walked out. Mina was so beautiful. Even if she was up to no good, he had nothing to lose. After Connor gave a few knocks on the door, Mina came to open the door with a smile. You're here, please, come in. Connor realized that he had overthought when he saw a table full of delicious food. Are you having a party or something? Why did you suddenly invite me over? Connor asked. I want to share my happiness with someone today. Since I know no one else in Porthampton, I asked you over. Besides, it was my fault for hitting you with cosmetics today. Think of this as an apology, Mina said with a smile, and told him everything that had happened in the live stream today. Connor listened silently and occasionally pretended to be surprised. After all, she still did not know that Seam, whom she kept mentioning, was him. I wonder who Seam is. He is so generous, Mina said bashfully to Connor as she chewed on her snack. Who else could he be? He is some rich guy, Connor said flatly. I am sure he is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible for him to tip me with that kind of money. Did you know that when he tipped me today, I was really moved? It would be even better if he is handsome. I admit I would not hesitate to marry him. Her face blushed as she spoke. Connor was startled, and then he frowned when he heard that. Aren't girls all gold diggers? What are you talking about? When did I become a gold digger? Mina was not too happy. Didn't you just say that you were moved by that rich guy? I was moved because he helped me. Mina hurriedly explained herself. He helped you? Connor asked in puzzlement. Yeah, after graduating from high school, I left home and came to Porthampton alone. I don't have any skills, and I can only make $2,000 or $3,000 a month. To support myself, I became a streamer. But I never sold my dignity and body for money. I have my principles. People insult me and say that I'm a whore online. No one had spoken up for me until I met Seam. He is the first person to help me online. Mina's voice was filled with emotions. Then, why did you run away from home? Connor asked after being amazed for a moment. Nothing. Mina gave a perfunctory reply. Don't just talk about me. How about you? I don't even know what you do for a living. Connor briefly introduced himself and talked about himself and Mandy. Mina's situation was similar to Connor's in the sense that they were both alone in this bustling metropolis. Mina might have done better than Connor did, but they both had so much more in common and shared many common topics. Mina went on to tell Connor more about herself, and Connor listened attentively. It was not until 11 a.m. that he returned to his room and crashed. 10:00 a.m. the next day. After getting out of bed and freshening up, Connor left on his electric bike. He had not bought himself clothes for the past half year because he had to support Mandy back then. So a yellow t-shirt was all he wore all day, and his college mates derided him because of that. Therefore, when he woke up in the morning and saw his shabby uniform, he decided to head to the largest shopping mall in Porthampton and bought himself a few decent outfits. After arriving at the shopping mall, Connor found a designer clothing store and walked straight in. The salesgirl did not look down on Connor, but instead, she served him with passion. He chose one set of each clothing style, totaling 5 sets of clothes, costing nearly $30,000. But such an amount of money was nothing to Connor now. After settling the bill, he kept one set for himself and asked the salesgirl to send the remaining sets to his rented place. He then went into the fitting room with the clothes and changed. The saying "clothes makes the man" could not be more accurate than this. Connor was by no means unattractive, and he was full of masculine charm. Just that the delivery uniform that he wore previously covered up his charm, making him look uncool. But now, after changing into some designer clothes, he looked like a changed person. If a man's charm was worth anything, the current Connor could feed the entire world's population with his handsomeness. There was no doubt that Connor was rich now, as he had spent over $30,000 at once. Coupled with his charming appearance, he had completely captured the heart of the salesgirl. She had stars in her eyes and even winked at Connor when he left. Connor took a deep breath once he was out of the fashion store. He had never felt so good at spending money in his entire life, paying $30,000 just like that without batting an eyelid. Before this, it would have hurt him to death if he had spent a few $100s. But now, he could not help himself. He had the right to overindulge now. "Where are you, Connor? The counselor's class is starting in a while. Why aren't you here yet?" Just as Connor was leaving the fashion store and getting ready to rush to the university, he got a call from Dominic. "I'm on my way." Connor pulled out his phone and replied. Then he rode his electric bike and scooted to the campus. As a junior, he did not have to attend many classes, except for the counselors, which he had to attend, no matter what. First, Connor did not dare to skip a counselor's class. Second, the counselor was a vixen, and he did not want to offend her. In Connor's eyes, the college counselor was a full-fledged vixen, the kind that bewitched sentient beings. 10 minutes later, Connor arrived at the lecture hall. By that time, the counselor was in the midst of delivering her lecture when Connor knocked on the door softly. "Come in," a soft voice spoke. Connor pushed the door open and went straight in. He then turned his gaze to the vixen-like woman on the podium. She was wearing a white shirt, and underneath them was her bust, which was ample and round. She also wore a body-hugging short skirt that wrapped her hips tightly, making her curves beautiful and seductive. Moving his eyes further down, he saw a pair of beautiful long legs in high heels. She looked sexy and alluring. The woman was Rachel Wallace, Connor's college counselor. "Why are you late?" The hot Rachel glanced up and down at Connor, and she asked in a tone that seemed to be a little angry. What else if not because he posed to be rich by inviting everyone to dinner last night? Now that he has spent all his money, he has to go deliver food again, Melvin said aloud. Everyone else burst into laughter upon hearing what Melvin said. "Did I ask you? Why are you being such a busybody?" Rachel turned to glare at Melvin and chided him. Melvin quickly shut up upon hearing that. There was a rumor going around Porthampton University that Rachel's background was so powerful that even the chancellor did not dare to mess with her. So, Melvin had to shut his mouth and behave. "I am sorry, Ms. Wallace. I overslept this morning," Connor said, looking at Rachel. "Get out and stand in the hallway. If you are still late next time, you don't have to come to my class anymore," Rachel said in an icy voice. "All right." Connor nodded helplessly and walked out of the lecture hall. Once he was out in the hallway, he started to think about what had happened in the past 2 days. He thought all this was incredible. Just yesterday, Mandy had dumped him because he was broke, and his college mates had insulted him. and now he had become the richest man in the world. That feeling was wonderful and unreal. What would Mandy think if she knows that I have so much money? Connor could not help but sigh in his mind. Half an hour later, the bell rang, and the class was over. Rachel stepped out of the lecture hall. Her high heels made a loud click-clack sound as she walked up to Connor. She looked at him up and down again, then squinted at him. "Help me get something from the registrar's office at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and deliver it to my dorm, do you hear me?" "Got it." Connor quickly nodded his head. "I will not spare you if you're late again." Rachel then swung her hips and walked downstairs. Connor returned to the lecture hall, looking miserable. When he entered, he found that Mandy and May were not there. "Where did you go earlier, Connor? How dare you be late to the counselor's class?" Dominic asked softly. "Too much gaming last night. I overslept," Connor explained softly. "You must have gotten too carried away by winning the lottery, right?" Spencer looked at Connor and smiled. "How much money did you win?" "Not much, just 100,000 something, Connor said with a smile. "Holy moly, 100,000 something is not much?" "You are rich," Spencer said in surprise. Connor was in no mood to talk about it. Instead, he glanced around and asked, "Where are Brandon, Mandy, and the others?" "Didn't they come to class today? Didn't you know? After we left yesterday, Mandy, May, and Lily had a confrontation with a goon in the restaurant. It is said that the goon has a bit of a known background and knows someone. He came to the campus this morning to take Mandy, May, and Lily away. Brandon should have gone to rescue them right now," Dominic quickly explained. "Ever since she followed Brandon, Mandy seems to have become a different person. She is arrogant. I heard she kicked the goon, but she didn't know that the guy had a background," Spencer chimed in. Connor could not help but sneer when he heard that. Meanwhile, at a private lounge in a bar called Dusk, a few gangsters were sitting on a couch while eating peanuts and drinking small bottles of alcohol. Mandy, May, and Lily were cowering in the corner of the room with anxious expressions. At that moment, Mandy felt immense regret. She never imagined that the blonde guy would have such a strong background. If she had known who the blonde guy was, she would have never kicked him with her high heels no matter what happened yesterday. The blonde guy was called Todd Knowles. Todd Knowles was a nobody, but his older brother was Peter Knowles. Peter Knowles was an infamous gangster near Porthampton University. The bars, karaoke boxes, and shower facilities around Porthampton University were all places dominated by Peter. If a student from Porthampton University crossed Peter, things usually did not end well for them. Bang, bang. Suddenly, a loud knock sounded from the outside of the private lounge. "Come in." Peter sat in the middle of the couch and said coldly. Brandon walked into the private lounge with a nervous expression. He bowed and scraped as he greeted Peter. "Hello, Pete." "Is that you, Brandon?" Peter looked like he knew Brandon. A smile appeared on Peter's face. When Mandy, May, and Lily saw the smile on Peter's face, a glimmer of hope flashed across their eyes. If Brandon knew Peter, there was still a way to fix the situation. "Pete, I'm so sorry. My girlfriend didn't know any better, and she hit your little brother." "Could you? Let them go today for my sake. I'll definitely repay you in the future," Brandon said inferiorly while looking at Peter. "Ho ho. Since Mr. Guthrie has requested it, then I will do it for your sake." Peter laughed coldly and said, "I originally planned to let my little brother savor these 3 ladies. But since Mr. Guthrie has made a request, then forget it. Compensate for my little brother's medical expenses, then you can take the 3 of them. How much are the medical expenses?" Brandon froze for a moment before asking through his gritted teeth. "Your girlfriend did the damage, so she pays 100,000. The other 2 will each pay $50,000, Peter said while pointing at Mandy. Upon hearing that, Brandon was frozen on the spot. He had a stiff expression on his face. Brandon had spent $70,000 at Brasserie Le Bernardin yesterday. Moreover, it was his dad's money. Now that Peter was asking for $100,000, Brandon could not possibly shell out that much money. "What's the matter?" "You don't have the money?" Peter asked with a frown as if he perceived Brandon's predicament. "Pete, isn't $100,000 a bit too much?" Brandon said lowly. "Ho ho, if you think that is too much, that's fine. The 3 ladies will spend a night with my brother, then we'll call it a day," Peter laughed pervertedly. "No, no," Brandon quickly shouted when he heard what Peter said. He then waved his hands. "Well then, Pete, how does this sound? First, I take her away. Then I'll send the money over after 2 days. Don't worry, I'll definitely have the money ready." Peter's lip curled into a half smile on his face. All right. Since we've known each other for so many years, I will do it for your sake. Don't you have a BMW? Right now, you can put your car up to be pawned here. Then you can gather enough money within 3 days, and I'll return your car to you. When Brandon heard that, he was stunned. What's the matter? You're not willing to? Peter asked coldly. No, not at all. Brandon quickly shook his head. He fished out his car keys and placed them in front of Peter. All right, take your girlfriend away, Peter said nonchalantly after taking Brandon's car keys. Let's go. Brandon looked at Mandy, May, and Lily with a resigned expression. The 3 girls quickly stood up and prepared to leave with Brandon. However, Peter suddenly shouted, Who allowed you all to leave? I only allowed Brandon to take his girlfriend away, but the 2 of you are staying. May and Lily instantly became pale when they heard what Peter said. They looked at Brandon and Mandy in despair. Brandon, you can't leave us here, May wailed. Explore up-to-date stories at novel.com. Brandon turned to glance at May before saying helplessly, I have to even put my car to be pawned. I don't have any spare cash to help you two. The 2 of you better think of a way yourselves. Brandon was never close with May and Lily to begin with. If he wanted to save the 2 of them, that would mean spending another $100,000. Brandon was not willing to suffer such a loss. After Brandon finished talking, he dragged Mandy out of the private lounge with him. May and Lily stood helplessly on their spots, and they had very ghastly expressions. They did not expect Brandon to be heartless enough to leave the 2 of them behind. Do the 2 of you plan on spending some money to avoid disaster, or do you plan on spending the night here with my little brother? Peter said while drinking beer and looking at them with a perverted gaze. May had a sultry figure and amazing assets. Moreover, she wore something very revealing today. The deep plunge top paired with a micro miniskirt fully accentuated her sultry figure. As for Lily, even though her figure was not as good as May's, she had pretty good looks. She was one of the rare beauties at Porthampton University. Pete, we will pay. May shuddered with fear when she heard what Peter said. She quickly stammered out a response before taking out her phone and started making calls. Lily was cowering beside May and had also started contacting her friends. Even though May and Lily came from well-off families, they had not reached the point of being wealthy. As such, $50,000 was a huge sum to them. 10 minutes later, the 2 of them had contacted all of their friends on Facebook. However, no one was willing to lend the 2 of them money. May, what do we do now? None of my friends are willing to lend me some money, Lily said in a choked voice. She was feeling so anxious that she was about to cry. How would I know what to do? All of my friends are saying they don't have money, May said helplessly while frowning. Lily hesitated for a moment and said lowly, May, I heard from Mandy today that Connor might have hit the jackpot for a lottery scratch card. That's why he had the money to treat everyone to a meal yesterday. Why don't you give him a call and ask him to lend the 2 of us some money? We humiliated him badly yesterday. Would he still lend us money? May asked hesitantly. Well, we can't find anyone else right now. Why don't we give it a try? All right. May nodded helplessly and dialed Connor's number. In the classroom, Connor saw May's incoming call. He did not even have to think to know what was happening, so he immediately declined her call. May did not give up. She dialed his number again. Who's this? Connor asked with an unfamiliar tone. Connor, it's me. I need $100,000 right now. Could you lend it to me? May looked down on Connor from the bottom of her heart, but she was completely out of ideas right now. Explore up-to-date stories at novel.com. Why should I lend you money? Connor said coldly. May was stunned when she heard what he said. She then gritted her teeth and said, Connor, didn't you recently break up with Mandy? If you lend me some money today, then I'll be your girlfriend. You know my looks aren't far from Mandy's. Besides, I have a better body than Mandy. You want to be my girlfriend? Connor could not help but laugh. He then said playfully, You think you're worthy? Connor, aren't you taking things too far? Isn't it just a jackpot from a lottery scratch card? Aren't I worthy of being your girlfriend? May felt angry and embarrassed. All right, I'm done wasting my breath. Okay, I can go over there and save you. But I have one condition. You and I will spend the night at a hotel together. How's that? Connor said slowly. When May heard what he said, She immediately blushed. She did not expect Connor to be this shameless. "I'll let you think for half a minute. After all, call charges are pretty expensive," Connor said coldly. May held her phone and could not help but turn to where the blonde guy was. Right now, she had to choose between the blonde guy and Connor. While Connor was a little on the poor side, he had pretty decent looks. Moreover, he had a burly figure from delivering food all year round and exuded a presence of manliness. If May had to choose between the two of them, she would rather choose Connor. "It's just spending a night with him. This is better than being in the hands of the blonde goon." TV said some things that humiliated the blonde guy yesterday. "Who knows what he'll do to me if I spend the night with him?" May weighed her options. She bit her lip and said, "All right, Connor. I'll do it." Connor immediately hung up after hearing her response. He felt a little emotional. The May Young who used to humiliate me in every possible way is now willing to sleep with me for $100,000. In this world, prostitution was more acceptable than poverty.